Minvo Procast. I am your host, Marc, and here with me today, our first returning guest. It's Guil Dormeus, and Guil is going to be
How's it going?
Here today to talk all things tech. We're going to dig into cameras. We're going to talk a little bit more about that RødeCaster video that had been released as we were live the last time you joined us, Guil.
Yeah.
We'll dig into a little bit more about you and your journey in content creation. And before we dig into all that, I figured this would be a good opportunity having you here because I haven't had a big chance to talk to you yet since Hurricane Helene and how that's personally impacted me. I figured you don't know about it. I haven't really spoken to the Minvo audience about it yet. We won't take too long, but it is important to me. So please stick with this, and then we'll get into the meat of today's topic. But yeah, if you didn't know, I've been living in Asheville, North Carolina for the past couple of years. And the reason for going there, well, many reasons, but one of the big ones is we decided to buy a property out there, my wife and I, and turn it into an Airbnb because that area has been up and coming, growing, really popular to go visit. And it's been doing great, the Airbnb. And then Hurricane Helene hit 2 weeks ago, a little over. And so what happened, Guil, was we heard it was coming, and we already had a scheduled trip to Michigan to see some friends that Friday when the hurricane did in fact hit. So we decided, let's just leave a day early. It'll be easier because it was like a 10-hour drive. There's a hurricane coming, and who wants to drive through something like that? So we just said, let's go a day early and avoid all the chaos, not knowing how chaotic it really was going to turn. But we went, and then I'm going to just kind of give a very broad overview, but we did have guests staying at that Airbnb during the hurricane. So we were terrified for them and felt awful for them. And the worst part is when that hurricane hit, it caused in the western North Carolina area some severe flooding, and that doesn't even sound like enough saying severe flooding. I mean, there was flooding that got over 20 feet. It was insane. Just a mile or so from where I had been living, they experienced that 20 plus foot flooding, and that whole town, the River Arts District where we live, was just completely underwater. The house we lived in actually was high enough up that it wasn't affected, but that's unfortunately not the case for many others. So the long story short is we were already scheduled to move out of our house in Asheville and move into another place in Black Mountain, which is a town just outside of Asheville, and that was another area that was hit really, really hard. And therefore, the place that we were going to live in actually miraculously is okay, but like much of Asheville, no power, no water still after over 2 weeks, and that's because this flooding literally destroyed the places like the water filtration houses and electricity companies. I mean, places were destroyed. So still no water, still no power. So no chance we could move in there. So we actually are now in Maryland, where I'm originally from, staying with my parents and her parents, and at least through October. That's the plan, is just to kind of regroup, figure out what we're doing next. We might move into that Airbnb ourselves and live on one floor and rent out the other to people, either families in need that have been displaced or maybe essential workers, something like that, where we can contribute and help the community. And side note, I don't know, Guil, if you had been following along, but because of the move, we needed to rent a truck. So we went basically cutting some some of the story out. Basically, from the Midwest to Knoxville, Tennessee, we rented a truck and then decided to start a GoFundMe and raise money to fill that truck up with essential items and
nice.
supplies that people need. And within really less than 36 hours, we were able to raise over $10,000 just from friends, family, coworkers, podcast community, YouTube communities, etc. So we were just blown away by that, filled up this truck with things from Home Depot, from Walmart, from some consignment stores, because clothing is really needed right now, especially as the weather starts getting cooler. And we filled that sucker up, found a distribution center, unloaded, and then spent the next week loading it up with all of our personal items. So it's been this whirlwind. We literally just got back into Maryland yesterday afternoon, unloaded, essentially went to bed, and now here we are, Gil. So that's the nutshell of what my last 2 weeks have been like. That's why we didn't have a ProCast last week. So thanks to the community for bearing with us. And yeah, if you have any questions, Gil, feel free, and no pressure. I just want to make sure if you have questions, maybe that means some of our audience does too, and I want to make sure to answer them.
Is the GoFundMe still active? Because we can definitely still support to that cause, because that's amazing what you and your wife are doing. I'm saddened to even hear that people are still being affected by that, and it feels like it was just yesterday that it happened, that I saw it all over TikTok, Instagram. So, but I'm happy that you're okay. And if you need anything from me, definitely, I'm here to support.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I've gotten so many generous offers like that. And you really start to learn how many people are out there care about you in situations like this.
Yeah. Which is, it's all, I mean, that's the thing that we definitely need in a time of need, to know that, hey, we have a community, we have people who are there to help us in our time of need.
Yeah, and I guess I got cut off from the stream there for a moment,
Okay.
But I'm back now, and all good. You can see me, hear me.
I can see you. Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. And to answer your question earlier, yes, we do still have that GoFundMe going. And what we're doing now is we're just, all that money that we continue to collect, we're just donating it to an organization, a local one there called Beyond Asheville. And they've been on Good Morning America. I think they've been on some other morning shows. They've been doing some phenomenal work, and we want to continue to support places and organizations like that. So that's where the money will go. I need to actually update the GoFundMe, but you can go to gofundme.com/F/Amy Marc supports AVL, and we'll make sure to include that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
So apparently I'm not being recorded, Gil.
No,
I don't know why, but I guess we can always pull this off of the
YouTube
later. I think let me make sure I'm streaming. Yep, I'm streaming. Okay. So yeah, thank you for bearing with me, and thank you for allowing me to indulge and share. It looks like maybe I'm having a space issue, Gil, but
storage.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had time to do anything with any of my devices, so I'm not surprised. But what I'm going to do is ask you first, before we dig into all the tech stuff, I wanted to ask you a little bit about you and your creating content, because for a long time, I've known you for a couple of years now, and I noticed that, you occasionally were posting, but I wasn't seeing that consistency that I've been seeing from you over the past couple of months. And so I wanted to start there. What changed for you? What all of a sudden, again, you went from every so often sharing some great content, but then kind of disappearing for a little while, and now it seems just like you've been more of a machine. So what changed for you, and really what was holding you back initially, if my perception's correct?
Yeah, you're actually right, and a lot of people have been asking me about that. And one thing that I would say is that I was getting in my own way, my own way, and I was also blaming scenarios or situations that I was in. "Oh, I don't have this, or I'm getting off work and I'm exhausted, and oh, I have a bunch of client projects to do, or I would use excuse after excuse. And one thing that I would say is that what I learned is life happens to us all. So I can either do it or I don't do it. And the consistency thing that kind of like triggered me was a bug that I got from watching other creators. And a lot of creators were putting out amazing content, and a lot of creators weren't putting on the content, but they were consistent and growing. And I looked at my phone, I looked at my YouTube channel, and it was around August, and I had 500 subscribers on my YouTube channel. And I said, well, this group of people and a plethora of other people won't come to my YouTube channel, won't come to my Instagram if I literally just don't do anything. So I decided to start posting, start asking questions to people who I was doing consultings with. Hey, what would you want to see on the YouTube channel? I know we're sitting down here for an hour. What videos would you want to see? And I started purposefully creating video content on stuff that people wanted to see. So I did a video on CapCut versus Final Cut Pro, because Final Cut Pro is a behemoth of a software, and people wanted to see how does it compare to a free software like CapCut. Then I started to ask myself more questions. Well, what other people want to see? And I started asking more professional creators. And then next thing I know, my channel was growing from 500 to 7, then 8, and then I finally hit 1,000. And I was like, oh wow, this was amazing. Let's keep going. And right now I'm sitting at 1,200 subscribers. My Instagram is growing, and I basically just started to become a little bit more serious about the things that I'm doing. And that quote that I said earlier, life happens to us all. So I can't make any excuse. Everybody has the same excuse. Marc is in a horrendous situation right now with his family, and he's live streaming. What excuse do I have? And that's one thing that I like to put in perspective. It's just like other people are going through their own life experiences. What is your excuse? Put your information out there, put your heart out there. Like, we have these talents and gifts, and not to bring religion into it, but it's almost like a sin not to use it. And it's like, why aren't you putting your best foot forward? Even if it's not your best foot, just take the step is the first thing.
Yeah, I'm with you, and thank you for sharing that with us. And yeah, and I will say this, at the same time, when life happens, it's also okay to take a step back if needed, right? In my case, I had to pull back a lot over these past 2 weeks on my content. I couldn't show up for the Minvo Procast last week because of everything going on. I couldn't post my daily posts that I like to post to LinkedIn. I couldn't make my podcasting morning chat show every single morning. But what I did do was I showed up when I could, right? Like, I didn't just phone it in and say, oh, forget it, I'm just not going to do any content. When I could, I would, right? And if I couldn't, I was okay with that, because, again, life does happen, and sometimes those challenges are just too big for us as content creators or human beings. So there's also, there's something important about giving yourself grace too when it's really needed. And I'm thinking here about consistency, and I just think it's important that we find that groove that works for us and then embrace it and go all in. Don't just dabble in it. Go all in once you figure it out. And then when life does happen, you won't feel so bad about pausing, right? I think that sometimes some people will feel bad about taking that break when they have to, because they really haven't been super consistent leading up to that moment, right? So do it now when you have the time, and then maybe even batch some content to help fill in those gaps. But ultimately, take your breaks when you need them, but stay consistent when you do have that freedom, when you do have that luxury to be able to produce content daily, weekly, whatever that looks like for you.
Oh, 100%. And I'll also include like having accountability partners. I recently joined a YouTube mastermind group, if you will, like Heather Ramirez. She's a YouTuber. She has something called a creator huddle up where she meets with creators once a week and hey guys, I just put out one video. Great, that's your win for the week. You put out a video. What's your goals for next week? I want to do a video and a reel. Okay, Gil. Well, we'll meet next week and we'll see how you did. And it's just one of those, it's so small, but like it's super impactful and it helps me out a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Thank you, Gil. All right, so now let's talk a little bit of tech and devices. And this is an area that I know you love jumping into.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit about that RødeCaster video that we were both so hyped up about when we were getting the live updates while we were streaming live. So what can you tell me since then? What and also fill in the audience who may not be familiar yet with the RødeCaster video, what it is, what makes it so special, and then anything new that you've learned about it or anything specific that's gotten you really excited since we first heard about it a few weeks ago.
Well, the RødeCaster video is a device that enables you to connect four HDMI inputs, two HDMI out, two XLR inputs, and it's pretty much a RødeCaster, which is an audio interface, but also a video switcher. And calling it a video switcher, it's also not giving it the credit that it deserves because it's way more than a video switcher because it has scenes built in. It's pretty much a built-in computer. You don't have to bring your laptop if you're producing a podcast or a live stream for clients anymore. You can if you want to, but this device it's a powerhouse. The thing that I'm really excited about is not for what it is at the moment, but for what it can be in the future because it has so many features right now. Wireless capabilities, Wi-Fi. We have the functionality to use it remotely. So if your client has a RødeCaster video in your home, you can produce their podcast remotely. It's just one of those things that I think will change the game for podcast production at the moment. And also, it does not have 4K, but to be honest, I don't think that 4K is something that is needed at the moment for a device like this. And if it was 4K, it'll probably have been way more expensive. But for what it is at the moment right now, I think it's probably the best device. If you have a podcast studio, if you're running a podcast production company, this is the one device for everything.
So then that last thing you said, would you not recommend it to the independent podcaster who isn't working with a studio or isn't working with a producer? They're just doing it all themselves. Is it an item is there maybe a better item, or do you still think that one's the one to go with?
So the price tag is $1,200, and
Yeah.
for like an independent person who just has a one-person setup, and if you're fine with your setup, I don't think you should upgrade to the RødeCaster video because you could obviously spend that money maybe in set design, maybe in marketing, maybe buying better XLR cables, because the RødeCaster video is really to me at least, for someone who has a space and records multiple podcasts and you just want to make it easier. It does have a functionality which is amazing called auto switching. So if I'm on the microphone and Marc is on the other mic, it will swap between camera angles, which I love. I love that
Yeah.
feature. But it's still something that I believe if you're running multiple podcasts a day, a month, this is something that you should really invest in. For somebody else who's just a one camera setup, I would recommend the Streamer X. Like that's what I'm currently using at the moment. It has one XLR, one HDMI, and it's a 4K capture card instead of 1080. So the video quality is going to be way better, and it's a simple, small footprint. So one microphone, one camera angle. That's pretty much for any simple creator. But if you want to include an additional mic, I would recommend the RødeCaster Duo, which is a 2 microphone input. And as far as cameras, like it doesn't have any camera input. But if you want to get something like the A10 Mini, which is a smaller device, it allows you to connect 4 camera angles. Then you're getting in the weeds. Then you're getting to multiple cables, and then that's where the functionality and the ease of having a RødeCaster video comes into play, where it's just one device and it makes things simple. But I think for $1,200, it's kind of a lot, especially,
Yeah, yeah, it is a lot.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking about this RødeCaster video. Is there, and then the Duo, when you said it doesn't have 4K and you didn't feel like it's a big deal, what would you tell a creator that's like, no, it's got to have 4K. I need it to have 4K. What's your answer to them to maybe prove to them, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be in 4K?
I've had this conversation multiple times, and it always ends in the person saying, wow, you have a point. And the thing is, if it's just for you and you're just creating content in your own vacuum, you're just creating content for yourself and you want 4K, hey bro, this is not the device for you. But if you're creating content for other people and you're making them smile and you're having an impact on their life and they're impacting other people with their content, this is the device for you. For me, 4K is great. It's fantastic. But I produce podcasts for clients and they're in 1080. I use the A10 Mini Extreme ISO, which is a 1080p video mixer. It outputs 1080. And I've been able to have people create amazing, impactful content that puts smiles on people's faces. And these clients are coming back. And then when I tell them that, hey, this is not 4K, they're like, it's not, it looks great. 4K doesn't push the needle forward. And to be honest with you, most people consume content on their phone that does not have a 4K display. So it's like you're not consuming 4K content. It's just the novelty of it being 4K. That's the thing that people want. And I understand it. Trust me. When the RødeCaster video was announced, we were on a live stream, but I was like, oh, of course it's going to have 4K. I mean, we're in 2024, like it has to be 4K. And when it wasn't, I was immediately disappointed. And that was one of the first things that I said, they failed. But then after sitting back and producing content for clients, maybe that same week, yeah, none of my clients asked for 4K. And to be frank with you, most people nowadays do not have a capable computer. Like, let's say it was 4K. Let's say the RødeCaster video has something called ISO functionality where it records every camera angle connected. A 4K video file is massive. So you're going to put 4 4K videos files on your computer to edit in Final Cut Pro. Your computer probably can't handle it. My computer probably can't either. Mm-hmm. So who is this for? Who is this person with this $10,000 computer that has this functionality to edit 4K video files? And what is the project? Maybe, I mean, Joe Rogan, I don't even think uses a 4K camera. Half of these people on the internet do not use 4K cameras. Televisions don't output in 4K. So it's like, it's just a novelty. Yeah.
Interesting. And do you think that's why? I mean, I know you don't know anybody specifically at Rode that could tell you this, but do you think that's why they didn't add the 4K? Because they recognize it's really more novelty at this point and not necessary? Or do you think it was more of an expense issue?
I've got to actually read and listen to some of their responses. Ryan from Rode, who's like one of the spokesperson, and he pretty much said it's computing power. It's just computing power and then cost. For something like this to exist, you have to realize that it's going to have to do research and development. It's going to have to come up with these components. I own a A10 Mini Extreme ISO, which is a 8 HDMI input, and it was $1,400, and it's a really great device. But for what it is just a video switcher. The A10 is way more than that. It has Wi-Fi, has Bluetooth. You can create scenes. We can do stuff like this on there. The A10 does not have that functionality, and it costs more. Granted, it does have more HDMI inputs, but they're all 1080. So for people to ask for something like that at $1,200 when it does so much more, I mean, to be honest, I'm surprised this thing doesn't cost 2,000. You know,
Wow.
like 2,000 as a 1080p device. But if it were to be 4K, you're looking at least $6,000.
Yeah.
Like this is how much these devices cost in the production world, like the Rolands and the other Blackmagic devices that are 4K. This device has XLR input, USB microphone inputs. It has Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. You can connect Rode Wireless Go systems into it. You can build scenes inside of it. And I don't think your traditional consumer understands that. They just see $1,200. That's ridiculous. It only has 2 mics. And it's like, well, maybe from your side, but if you're a prosumer, somebody who creates content and then creates content for other people, you'd understand that this is just a great tool to help you execute podcast production. And I've been there where I've had multiple devices. Like for me to produce a podcast, I'm using an A10 Extreme ISO. I'm using RødeCaster Pro. I have this Y cable that I hope that doesn't get magnetized while it was traveling, and make sure that the cable's not bent or crimped. And then I have all these long cables to make sure everything is good. And then these are different operating systems. And I'm the conductor putting them together and orchestrating them just to produce content. But you're telling me that there's one device now that pretty much enables you to produce content quickly, easily, efficiently, includes mic delay because microphones might be a little slower or faster than the video. For $1,200, that's a great deal for me, at least. I think so.
So when are you getting one?
I want to get one soon, maybe hopefully at the end of the year, if not next year.
Okay. All right, cool. I'm excited for you to get it because I feel like then that's probably when I'll end up wanting one myself once I learn from you how to best utilize it. I'm excited about it. Well, then let's go from talking about a device that can handle the cameras and handle the mics to some cameras. For example, I wanted to actually ask you about one camera because the producer of my podcast, the Podcasting Morning Chat, Ashley was looking, she was in the market for an affordable camera. She wanted to spend a few $100, but she didn't. I think her limit was around $300 or $400, if I'm not mistaken. And she ended up going with, and I'm curious if you know anything about it, the DJI Pocket 2 gimbal.
Okay.
Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on this kind of device? Is it a good device, a good camera for a creator, an independent creator to work with? Any thoughts on it?
I really love the DJI Pocket 3. That's my favorite. I actually got to use it. I never used the Pocket 2, but I am familiar with it. It's a really good device if you're a solo creator. Even if you want to do brand content, you can actually use it. It just makes creating content easy. To me, it's extremely professional because it does something that it gets out of your way. You no longer have to carry a heavy gimbal to get stable footage. The video quality is great. I don't have experience with the 2, but for the 3, I could speak on. It has wireless microphone functionality, so you can just clip on a microphone and just start talking, and that means no longer syncing video. Which is something that a lot of creators fuss with. You have the video, then you have the audio, then you have to sync it, and then it gets out of sync sometimes. The DJI Pocket 3 eliminates that. It also has a great battery life. You can throw on something called an ND filter. So if it's too bright out, you just pop it over there. It's amazing. It has tracking. So if you are in a room, you just want to showcase your studio. I've used it before, and it just tracks you and follows you around. And you can have it stay put on the tripod. You walk and it'll follow you around the room. It just gets out of the way, and it pretty much does a job that somebody else should be doing, right? If you have somebody in the room, hey, just follow me. It does it for you. And most people right now, they're just solo creators, which is fine. It's just that we need the tools in order to help us execute the job. And the DJI Pocket 2, the 3, even maybe some other cameras would definitely work for that.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it follows around, and I think follows you around, right? what I find would be challenging is getting used to that, right? Like as an independent creator, when it's just one of us and we've got one, maybe two cameras that we can switch from, we still ultimately need to be stationary in the same place. So then bringing in this gimbal that can actually follow us around, then we got to get used to actually more movement. Yeah. Right? Because we want to try to make sure we're staying within the frame. And I already have been obsessing over myself being a little bit out of frame. And, but now having a device that can actually follow you around gives you that freedom, and probably it'll take a little bit of getting used to, I would imagine.
Yeah. Sony has that feature as well. The Sony ZV-E1 actually has, instead of Z10, it has the tracking feature. So if you have a wide lens, it can like crop in and follow you around, but it's just that same focal length. And to me, that's great. It just makes creating content easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, then let's talk about some other cameras. What are some cameras that are out there on the market that you, Gil, are really excited about that you think some of our community needs to hear about?
Well, so right now, Sony is rumored to come out with one camera called the Sony A7 IV. So right now I'm shooting on the A7 IV. It's been out for, I think, maybe a lot longer, and which is during the cycle. It has pretty much right now at the end of the cycle, and obviously there's going to be a new one coming out. So the A7 V is rumored to come out. DJI might be coming out soon with a mirrorless camera. So there's rumors about that. So I'm curious to see how that goes. But as far as right now, the Canon C80, which is a cinema camera, which is something that's like $4,000 or $5,000. It's a great camera. You can shoot Netflix stuff with it. It's pretty much out of my price range right now, because to get the thing about getting a camera that people don't think about is you buy the camera, then you got to buy the lenses. And if you aren't using those lenses, that means you have to like buy into that market. So if I were to buy this Canon camera, I'd have to buy Canon lenses. I don't own any Canon lenses, so that's going to be super expensive. But for me right now, the Sony A7 V is on my list. And one thing I'll always tell people is when you buy a camera, just buy the camera body, and you can buy lenses after that. Like sometimes cameras come with the kit lens. Kit lens is cool if you want to just get started, but it's not going to give you that look. I've had multiple clients say, well, I'll just buy the kit and I'll get a lens. I'm like, yeah, you're going to get a lens, but you might as well just throw away that lens because it's not going to look good. So, so I tell people all the time, buy a camera body. If you can get it refurbished, get it used, and then you can like invest in some really good glass, some really good lenses. Some good options are my favorite, the Sony A7C, which is one of my favorite cameras. Has a flip out screen. It's touch screen, touch to focus. It's lightweight. Like to me, it's a great camera. Small and compact. That's the thing right now. As long as the camera is small and compact, you're able to put the lens on there, has a great battery life. Those are the things. So for me, full frame, compact, great battery life, and I can swap the lens out. That's the features that I look for.
You think that that's the features that... Look, I'm going to just be real. I am not a camera expert at all. The cameras intimidate me because I feel like there's so much to know about them. Where like I love microphones. It's pretty easy to know what you're getting with a microphone. There's only a few things you got to look out for depending on your situation. So what can you tell us as far as if we're trying to get into the camera game, but we don't want to get too overwhelmed? I get some of the things that you've shared with us that you look for. Are those the same things that a new camera person should look for too? Or is there anything else that they should be on the lookout for?
So like right now, I would tell people before you buy the camera, understand what you're trying to shoot and where. So understand what look you want to emulate. So right now, if you want this look, you'd need a room that's pretty wide. You'd need distance from me and the camera. And right now I'm using a 50mm lens. So you'd have to have some understanding on I would say rent a lens. There's a great platform called sharegrid.com. You can go on there and like rent a camera from a photographer, videographer, and you could play around with different focal lengths. That way you can understand where you should be sitting, and then invest in the lens. So for me, the lenses that I like are lenses that have great background blur. So notice how I have some good footage here, and that's because I'm using a camera that has the aperture of f1.4. So 1.4 pretty much means that the camera is like extremely wide open, and it's going to be super bright. So right now these lights are really bright, so I had to like dim them a little bit, but you get great camera blur, you get great depth of field, and that's, to me, is a great look. Some people, they don't really care for it. Like, I love this look. I love how you could tell my computer here is blurred up, the flowers and all the other stuff like that. To me, that's the look that I want, and I always wanted that look. So I learned how to achieve it, and I needed a lens that allowed me to do that. A kit lens will never give you that. Like the kit lens that you buy from BJ's or Costco, when you buy your camera, it will never give you this look, because those lenses aren't meant for that. They don't have an aperture that is low as f1.4. And that's what I look for. So full frame. When I first got started, you get a little kit from BJ's. It's not going to be full frame. So I need to get a full frame, which enables me to bring in more light. More light means sharper image, better quality of image. Not that the image is going to be bad on a crop sensor, but you're going to get a better quality of image. And then low light, meaning now that the sensor is bigger on a full frame, if I'm shooting a bar mitzvah, if I'm shooting a wedding and it's at night, the image is not going to look grainy. It's not going to look, bad. Full frame enables you to shoot outdoors at night a little bit better than crop sensor. So to me, it's all about not getting in the way. And also, full frame cameras have more functionality. Like, I can customize these buttons to do whatever I want them to do. And that's just one of those things where, like, my Sony A7C and a brand new one, it's going to be way different. And that's the thing that I love about full frame cameras or more professional cameras, because it gives you that functionality to use your camera as you see fit. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. So then tell me a little bit about how, or if, AI is playing a role in these types of devices, in these cameras, because look, for one, this is the Minvo Procast. We're fans of AI. AI helps out a lot with the Minvo technology. How is AI playing a role in camera technology? And yeah, can you expand? Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah. So right now with AI, most Sony cameras, is for what I shoot with, and Nikon, they have the ability to track cars. So be able to track a moving vehicle. So if you're on a racetrack, you'll be able to track a car. No longer are you just like waiting to hit the shutter and take the photo. Your camera now has the ability to track cars, track animals, track babies, track the cat's eyes and focus on that. Also, cameras now have skin retouching. So if you want to have your skin look soft, you can take the photo on there. There's so many different features. Like for the longest, it's not necessarily AI, but I guess it can be. I can register my face. So I did a wedding a few years ago, and what I would do is I would go to the bride and groom and take their photo and register them. So that way, when the camera sees their likeness, it'll focus on their face, not anybody else's. And this is an older feature. I guess you could say that it's AI, but I mean, back in the day, we didn't really call it AI. I guess it's like, that's AI. And again, just going back to the terms, like, it shouldn't get in your way. It shouldn't cause friction. So one feature that I love is being able to transfer some of these presets from this camera to another camera. So if I'm shooting a whole podcast and my client has a look that they like, I can, copy the preset, send it to the other camera. That way the other camera has that as well. So
cool. So what I keep thinking as you're sharing some of those features, from an audio perspective, a lot of times audio engineers, editors, etc., will tell you not to use the features available on the software. So for example, we're using Riverside right now, and Riverside has some cool features during the recordings that you can set. For example, I can set noise reduction, and that'll eliminate the noise around me, or at least reduce it some so it's not as distracting. Or there's audio enhancement. If I'm not using a great microphone, you can actually turn that on during a recording and it'll improve the quality of the audio. But a lot of audio engineers, editors, etc. will say, don't do that. I'll do that in post-production. Just give me the raw file. Would you consider that similar in the world of cameras and those features?
Yes, for photos, 100%. I don't want any filters or anything on there. For videos, if I'm shooting a live stream, if I'm doing a YouTube live, IG live, and I'm using my camera, I don't care. If it's a paid gig where I'm using, I have a client in here, yes, I need it extremely raw and basic and with no filters at all, because if I need to make adjustments later on. Audio, I do put some like noise gate on my RødeCaster. I'll throw on some filters on there, but the RødeCaster also has the ability to give you the pre-post production audio. But I don't know. I guess for the rules, I'm kind of flipped. Audio, I'd have more filters on, and then video, not so. Actually, none ever. Yeah, so it's weird for audio because I'm not really an audiophile. Like, to me, as long as it looks good, I'm like, all right, let's go.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I think so. What it sounds like is really what the conclusion I think I come to a lot with any of these things. It's really what's your preference, right? So as the creator, like some people may want to turn on all the filters before they go so that they don't have to spend as much time in post-production getting stuff the way they want it, right? But then there are other people that would rather just get that raw file is just exactly how it's spitted out so that they can go in and play and tinker and do the things. And ultimately, there really isn't a right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of preference. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast planner, because we briefly touched on it last time you were part of the Procast, and it was really more of just a, hey, get this podcast planner. It's really helpful. I want to dig into more about what makes it helpful, right? So before we do that, what drove you to create this idea of a podcast planner, and how can it help creators? And let's get specific. Can it also help YouTubers stay organized in what's oftentimes very chaotic when we are putting our content together?
So thank you for bringing it up. My podcast planner kind of came into its existence by me having a casual conversation with a client during a coaching call. And it was just her she just asked me, well, I just watched your video 100 times and you executed, you brought this up, you said this, how did you do that? And I looked at my board and I was like, oh yeah, I write, my objectives, and I have, what's the hook? What's the question? Storytelling, statement, bold statement. And then I started talking about how I have a script outline on here. I also have the equipment that I'm using. So she said, well, can you write that down and give it to me? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I gave it to the clients, like, well, follow this. Episode title, episode number, episode synopsis, episode objectives, script outline, target audience, guest interviewees, equipment. And then I just gave her the list. And I said, you know what? I'm pretty sure there are multiple people like her. That's my mentality. If Marc likes chocolate Twizzlers, there's going to be 100 more people that like it. So, and then those people might be Guil. So that's where my mentality went, and I just went ahead and started creating it.
Yeah,
so
cool. And chocolate Twizzlers, you got to watch the last episode with Guil to know what he's talking about. That is a callback to the last episode. I love that. Okay, cool. I think it's funny because we get into this as entrepreneurs, and we start these podcast production companies, you and I, and a lot of times the new products and services that we add are a result of what our clients are asking us for, and that we don't even think about in the moment when we're creating our businesses. And it's usually our clients that are kind of helping guide us into these different offerings. And it's cool to hear how that worked out for you. So how can you believe that can be just as serviceable for somebody who's got a YouTube channel as somebody who has a podcast?
100%, because I asked the question because she was watching my YouTube video and she wanted to use it for her podcast, and this could 100% work. And I ask myself this all the time: what is this video? What is the synopsis of this video? What is the objective? What are people going to gain from this video? So I don't want to just put out a video, hey guys, check out this product. Really? Like, all right, because I just had a video about the Elgato Wave Micron Pro, which is holding up my camera now. And I wanted to have people not just know about it, but I wanted people to know how I'm using it. And actually, who am I speaking to? Who is the target audience? And the target audience question, a lot of people are asking, well, why do you put that in there? Well, if I'm making a podcast, a video, when I'm making anything, I don't want to just have it a broad net for everyone. I want it to be specifically for this type of people because these people would enjoy it. So I think this planner is great for any creator.
Okay, I love it. I love it. And then here's a question for you, Guil. Why go the journal route as opposed to creating something electronically for people?
So for me, it's all personal. When you write something down, to me, I remember it forever. Like, I am a mechanic by trade, and that's what I do full time. When I do a repair, when I'm working on anything, any project, I write down the problem, the solution, what are the things that might have helped, and when I need to go back, I remember it. If I'm going through that problem again, I remember it. Like, I remember I have a fields notes when I started photography, and I used to fill it up. When I do a photo shoot, when I'll do a outdoor shoot outside, when I'll do a shoot and it's blazing hot, my camera overheated. Oh yeah, well, it's 102 degrees out here in Florida, humidity's at 92. My camera overheated. Cameras overheat because XYZ, and it's just something that I write down. Knowing the best focal length, like me understanding the distance in my room. Okay, well, I think a 50 millimeter at this angle in this room works, and I'll write it down. When you write stuff down, you remember it. It's like engraving it in your head. So your podcast planner, it just would be a muscle memory. So then now, by the end of you filling it up, you would have an idea on how to produce a well-produced podcast and YouTube video.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. All right. So, and where can they get that podcast planner?
They can get it on Amazon, or you can go to guildormeus.com/planner, and you can get it there.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So, final question, or maybe questions for you. When I'm thinking about all of the tech, and I told you I get a little overwhelmed with camera stuff, it makes me think about other creators and really finding that balance of being creative, that creative side, and that technical side. And sometimes if we're not careful with balancing them, one gets a lot more attention than the other. So how do you, Guil, find that balance between the tech stuff and the creative stuff? And what advice would you give others to help them find that balance?
I think it's all about having fun. Like for me, of course, I make money with this stuff, and some of these things are very crucial to the success of my business and the success of other people's business. But I also like to remind myself that these are tools, but also toys, and I actually enjoy them. And I also like playing around with ideas in my head. Like, oh, this would be cool if I connect I get a Rode Streamer X and one camera setup, and I'm in one of my client's store. And like I filmed a video the other day, and I was at my client's co-work space, and I said, I think it'd be awesome if I just use one camera setup to announce my workshop with my Streamer X and a microphone, and had one light. and I played around in my head, and then I brought it into existence. For me, it's fun. You know, you have to remember that you enjoy this. Yes, it's work. Yes, it's, you know, you make money with this, but you actually like it. So, like, have fun doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is the name of the game. And I think that if you're not having fun with, say, the technical side of it, and you're feeling like, yeah, these cameras that Gil suggested, they sound awesome, but I got too much to figure out. I can't add another thing in. Then keep it simple for now, right?
Yes.
Or reach out to Gil, and maybe Gil can help you simplify the process. But either way, find ways to keep it fun. And if it's not fun anymore, then go back to what you were using, and don't force that square peg into the round hole, as they say.
Yeah, and I remember 2013, I was watching this video by this guy named Gerald Poland, Fro Knows Photo, and he was talking about shutter speed and doing the math. Hey guys, if you have a full frame camera, you put a crop distance camera on, there's a crop factor 1.4 times, and my brain says math? Oh no. Like I hate math. But then I realized, Gil, this is fun. You enjoy science, you like photography. So if this little slight inconvenience is in there, like when you're climbing up to the top of the slide as a kid, it sucked when you're climbing up. It really did suck. But when you got up there and you saw your friends, and then you said, all right, Gil, go down the slide, it was fun. But you have to go through a little struggle to have some fun. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because I think my point is if you're banging your head against the wall and you're trying this and that, and no matter what you're trying, it's just not fun and you're not getting it, that's the time I'm suggesting maybe pulling back a little bit. But yeah, to your point, new things generally are challenging for most of us, right? So you got to embrace the fact that, this is going to be a little challenging at first. Can I get to the finish line or not, right? Like, do I see my way to that finish line? And you got to give yourself a little bit of time, a little bit of practice to get to the finish line. And once you do, you'll usually find, okay, that wasn't as bad as I was telling myself it was going to be.
But even like going back to what you said before, like about the consistency, if it's not fun, it's okay to stop.
Yeah.
It's okay. Take a break.
I think, yeah, that's true. And even sometimes pivoting, right? Maybe you've just tried the same type of content over and over and over again, talking about the same stuff over and over and over again. Maybe it's time for something different. Like, it's okay to change. I mean, I think sometimes as creators, we forget we are kind of artists too. This is an art. And if you got to enjoy the art you're making. And if you're not enjoying it, then go out there and figure out what you do enjoy creating if you like being a creator. So yeah, I'm with you, Gil. I think that's some good advice. Thank you. And that's why I asked you back, and that's why I'm sure we'll have you back again. I'd love to make this somewhat of a regular thing. Maybe once a month we'll do this with me and you, and we'll talk tech. I would love to do that. So and why don't you just tell everybody where they can find you?
Well, I'm everywhere at Guil Dormeus, Guil, last name Dormeus. You can go to youtube.com/Guil Dormeus. I'm on Instagram at Guil.Dormeus. So yeah, I'm there.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to put that in the description for people. And yeah, Gil, thank you again. Appreciate your time. And we'll do this again next week with a new guest, Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern time, live on LinkedIn and YouTube. This is the Minvo Procast. I am Marc Ronick. Thank you again, Gil. We'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bye.
Okay, now it won't let me end it. I'm going to hit